So welcome everyone. We are recording this webinar just to let you know. As we're letting people in, we would love it if you could tell us where you're zooming in from and maybe one or two words about how you're feeling today. If you want to throw those things into the chat, we love to see um, where our furthest alum is zooming in from. That's always a cool one, right? Um, so we got a good number registered for today. And people are just coming into the waiting room. And so, as we're letting people in, again, welcome. And if you want to say where you're zooming in from and around the world. Oh, you got Portland, Becky.
Well, that's me. That's me.
Yeah. And before that, we had Haverhill, Massachusetts, where I used to live
Awesome.
for a
Okay.
decade.
Oh, wow.
And you can also say how you're feeling
Maybe. Yeah.
about this, about today, one or two, a phrase. We have someone who was recently laid off. We're hearing a lot of that. We
Yeah.
are. Um, and thank you for sharing that, for being brave enough to share
Tough
that.
out there.
Yeah. All right. So it's 1:02. I'm going to jump right in, Becky, and welcome everyone to our webinar today. I'm Nicole Anderson, and I am the Senior Associate Director for Alumni Career Services and Career Mentoring Programs at Tufts. And our webinar today is Owning Your Story in Times of Change, from Self-Advocacy to Organizational Influence with Becky Ferrone. We will be presenting for about 50 minutes today, and we have a jam-packed session. So Becky will give you directions on, how we're going to address questions throughout the end. But again, for those just joining, we are recording this webinar, and it will be posted on our YouTube playlist within the next few days. I will put that link in the chat. And then finally, before I introduce Becky, I want to acknowledge that the Office of Alumni Engagement, where I work, we have a community values statement, and I'll just read that now. Our mission invokes an environment of mutual respect, free expression, and inquiry. Program participants accept these principles when they join this community, and in doing so, they agree to abide by the following values. Number one is respect for the rights, differences, experiences, and dignity of others. Number two is that we express our viewpoints in a thoughtful and respectful manner. Third, honesty and integrity in working with all members of the community. And number four, we are accountable for our personal behavior. So let me introduce our presenter, Becky Ferrone. Growing up in unconventional Vermont with a defiant, why can't a girl do that? Becky Ferrone turned that declaration into a 30-year career, breaking barriers in male-dominated spaces, from Microsoft's original Outlook team to leadership roles at Nike, Starbucks, and Columbia Sportswear. She also knows firsthand what it takes to navigate reinvention and the moments when accomplishment and self-doubt occupy the same space. That lived experience is part of what she brings to her coaching. Today, as founder of Fireworks Coaching and career advisor at MIT Sloan, Becky works with professionals navigating transitions and leadership challenges, people who are smart, accomplished, and somehow still are second guessing themselves. She brings a uniquely interdisciplinary lens, a Tufts University degree combining art history and American studies. She has a master's in information design from Carnegie Mellon and an ICF professional certified coach credential earned through 500 plus hours of real client work to help people move from overthinking to clear, confident action. So welcome back, Becky. I'm going to hand the presentation over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Hi, everybody. And those hours are now up to about 7:50. Very exciting. So what we're here to do today is talk about the messy parts. And I want to tell you a little bit about what today is and what it is not. Also, really sorry to hear everybody in the chat has been laid off. And, even if you're just bummed out at the state of the world, that's welcome too. So I hope this cheers you up a little bit. So we're not here to polish a LinkedIn headline. We're not doing personal branding. We're definitely not here to pretend the hard parts of your career didn't happen. So we're going to do something a little different, maybe even a little braver. So we're going to look at the stories that you've been carrying, the ones you skip over in interviews, the ones that you don't want to talk about when you're networking. maybe the part of your resume you hope nobody really knows or notices. So these are the messy, complicated, didn't go as planned stories. So I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, but please stick with me and grab a pen or paper or sticky notes or crayons on your wall, whatever works for you. Undisclosed federal location, Eric. That's funny. Okay. So just a little bit about me, a little bit of context. So Nicole already explained a bunch of it, but really these 30 years inside these big organizations that she mentioned, Microsoft, Nike, Starbucks, Kaiser, Columbia, I've spent a lot of time in the rooms with people who had impressive titles and real power, and I bet you do too. I bet you've had that, right? But what I've noticed is that we carry a pretty outdated idea of what leadership actually means. We think it belongs to the person at the head of the table, but I see it a little differently. I think if you're a person, you are a leader. It's not just a title. It's how you show up for your team, for the people around you, and for yourself, which is exactly why your story matters and why owning it is actually a leadership act. So I want to mention something before I go any further. This is brand new content, and it might may or may not go to the end of our time together. And if it doesn't, I really welcome Q&A time that might get expanded, whether it's on this topic or not. We did that in our last webinar, and it went really well. So, and Nicole will help me hopefully manage that in the chat. So, getting a little bit more specific about today is we're really talking about identity, specifically who gets to define yours. And we're going to touch some real things today, more on the light side. So if anything comes up that really feels really deep for you, please pay attention to that. And a therapist is really the right partner for that work. I am a fully credentialed coach, and as part of our training is also knowing when, or having a sense of when the line between coaching and therapy might approach. So it's my one caveat for the day. So here we go. I want you to read through this list and just notice what lands. Maybe it's one thing, maybe it's several. Which one might be for you? Feel free to add it to the chat or speak up. You can just put the number in. You can say the whole thing. You don't have to do anything. But here's what I've learned is most accomplished professionals have at least one of these stories running in the background of your head. Great. Thank you for adding 2, 4, 5. Okay, a bunch of sevens. So the higher you've also climbed in your career or the longer you've been working, often the louder these stories get because the stakes feel higher and there's more to lose. So you're not here by accident and you're not alone. So, okay. Thank you for sharing. I think it's Denise for some number 8, 2 and 4. Yeah. These are tough things. These are very human things, but I'd like to share some options for how to deal with those in your own head and also publicly. 3, 4, and 6, Brianna. Okay. Lots of stuff going on. Yeah. All right. Let me tell you a story. I want to tell you a story about a job I didn't get. So a number of years ago, I won't tell you how many, I was interviewing at Tableau, which is a data visualization company in Seattle. You've probably heard of it. And like a lot of you, I had spent years judging my own career. I'd look at my resume and I'd think, oh, I never stayed anywhere long enough. I jumped around, right? I didn't do that straight arrow climb. What if they think, what are they going to think about me? And I've been interviewing for a while at this point, and others used to think I was like really good at this. They didn't know what was going on in my head. But so the day before, very stressful day before an interview, you've all been there. I happened to come across this talk by Elizabeth Gilbert. And so she's an author. You probably know her most famously from her book, Eat, Pray, Love. She's written other ones as well. And she was speaking for one of Oprah's events. And I found the recording, I think like Oprah's Soul Sunday or something. And the talk was called The Curiosity Driven Life. And something she said really changed everything for me. So, pretty picture, huh? Gilbert talked about how there's two kinds of people in the world. Jackhammers, the people with one singular passion who drill down on it forever. Hummingbirds, these are the people, hello, I'm one, who move from flower to flower, field to field, trying this and trying that. What was kind of interesting too is that she started off her talk by saying, this whole idea came to her after she gave one of her jackhammer or, what's your one passion um, speech. And someone, reached out to her on Facebook and said, I would think I would know if I had a passion by now. I'm in my 40s. Like this person was politely pissed off. And that really kind of shifted something for Elizabeth Gilbert. And that's where this concept came up. But she said something I will truly never forget. Hummingbirds end up cross-pollinating the world. I actually, right behind me, have at least one, if not two pictures of hummingbirds. They bring an idea from here, they weave it into there, and they take it somewhere else. And so their so-called scattered path is actually their superpower. Really, in that moment, I almost cried because for the first time, I saw my career not as a problem to try to explain to somebody else, but as exactly what made me valuable and unique and maybe even irreplaceable. It was a really huge moment. I've actually shared this concept and the video is no longer available, but the recording is. I've shared this with so many people. I find a lot of people really resonate with this. But what happened to me that next day, I walked into that Tableau interview feeling really authentically and genuine way proud of who I was. And I didn't get the job, but I was one of the two finalists. But I really showed up for myself, really as me for the first time in years. And that has stayed with me. This concept has really stayed with me. So, any other hummingbirds here? If you want to give a shout in the chat, you'll probably, yes, Victoria, 100%. Okay. We got a whole flock. I don't know what the word is for a group of hummingbirds. I know the others are flocks, but okay, I'm forced into one lane. Yep. Jack Cameron, you want to be a hummingbird? Me. Really, really impactful concept for me, and I hope it is for you too. So that's just the beginning of what we're going to do today. Okay, so how can any of us get our hummingbird moment? We have a bit of a hurdle. And I've shared this slide before in other webinars. You may or may not have seen it, but this is a literal visual representation of this voice we all have inside us, the judge. I'm trained and do a lot of work around something called positive intelligence that talks about how we all have a judge and then we all have our own flavors, 9 different flavors like ice cream, of our own different accomplice saboteurs. But this one is usually the loudest. And I'm bringing it up right now because it doesn't show up equally all the time. It gets the loudest when we're in transition. You're laid off, you move across the country, you do something. It doesn't even have to be like something we might consider like a bad experience. It could be something good. I mean, I remember when I was getting married, I was, all sorts of judge voices going on. Um, so starting something new, looking for work, walking into a room where we feel like we have to prove ourselves, that's when this voice is going to get loud. But it can feel like the truth, but it's probably not. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at what the judge has been saying about one specific story that you're carrying. And we're not trying to silence that story or that voice permanently. They can actually be protective, these voices. And also we only have, less than an hour. So let's see what we can do here. All right. So here's where the pen, paper, crayons, wall, what have you comes into play. I'm going to ask you to do something that might feel a little uncomfortable, and that's okay. Being uncomfortable can be a sign of growth. I want you to think of one story from your professional life that you're still carrying, still holding on to. Sometimes it shows up at 3 in the morning. I finally said this, right? So maybe it's something that you've never quite made peace with. Maybe it's a thing that you rehearse how to explain what happened before an interview. And maybe it's part of your resume, like I said, that you hope nobody asks about. So I want you to write down what the voice says about it, not what happened, no literal facts here. We'll come back to that later, but what the judge is telling you. So we're going to take about 3 minutes and I'm going to try to go off camera only because I want to give you some privacy without, me looking over your shoulder. So I can see on my end, it's 15 minutes after the hour. So I'm going to go ahead. You can do whatever you like, Nicole. Does anybody have any questions or concerns before we start? Okay, here we go. 3 minutes. I just want to add that if you need more time, you can have it. I'll check in a minute. Okay, we're just at about 3 minutes. Just say either yes or no in the chat if you need more time, please. Okay, got 3 no's. All right, now that looks pretty conclusive. Okay, let me turn my video back on. Thank you. All right. So how was that? What was that exercise like for you guys? Again, you can say something in the chat, you can come off mute, or you can say or reply just yourself. Painful. Okay. Cathartic. Yeah. I'm gonna guess because I've been there, spent years in this space of not looking at it very closely because it hurts. So this sort of like ripping the Band-Aid off, maybe. Ready to work on this. Okay. Yeah. I want to say something about that judge voice too. It can be really helpful to give it a name that's not yours, because then you can start getting an idea about when it shows up and start, talking back to it a little bit. I hear you. I see you. You don't get to win right now, but sometimes that judge also maybe just wants you to take a break. Just something to say about that. Okay. All right. We're going to do a one more exercise today, but let's talk about some other things first. So I want to name something that doesn't get said enough. Well, when we all go through these hard things, layoff, a role that wasn't right, being pushed out, scapegoating, been there, have the t-shirts for all of them. The official story, maybe from others' perspectives or your judge's perspectives, it's some sort of career setback, or you did something wrong, or something's wrong with you, right? So the official and unofficial story are getting very blurry in our heads. But what's really happening is something that could be more even disorienting, is we don't just lose the job, we lose the context that told us who we were, the title, even the commute, the team, the daily rhythm, maybe the favorite mug that you grabbed out of the kitchen. And so when that goes, that sense of who you are and where you should be, that's where the inner voice comes in and fills that gap. And it's not kind. We've been talking about that. So it's not the only interpretation, but that really, if you think about the experience you had as data, what did you learn? What did you survive? What are you actually capable of? Even in my own experience, one of my really painful times, I had this sudden epiphany when it happened that, you know what, I'm actually not going to believe or think that leaders know everything and have all the answers. That was maybe the genesis of this work I do today about helping people really advocate for themselves. And that was like, I probably could pinpoint the date and time that happened. I haven't gone back to check. Um, and I wanted to give you another example too. One of my previous clients used to be a VP of finance. And when we started working together, she said she had just made a decision that took some real courage, some really big reframing. She stepped down one level intentionally. It was a very terrible CEO, impossible situation, and she chose her well-being and the quality of her work over her title. And in doing that, she actually got back to work that filled her cup more, what she really loved doing. She stepped away from the politics and just wasn't going to let that leader impact her mental health, her physical health too. So it looked like a step back on paper, but not for her internal courage or self-advocacy. And, she knew exactly what she was doing and why. So she actually chose a different identity in that moment. So that's not retreat, and that's self-knowledge and owning that and saying, I did this. This is my deliberate choice. It really can bring you a lot of power. Someone says something in the chat. Okay, coffee shops are searching or going through battling judgmental internal. Yeah, it's really, really tough stuff. That's why I kind of include a lot of the work around this internal voice and self-limiting beliefs in my coaching. I'm not immune either. And when you run a business, all sorts of inner voices pop up there. So, all right, I want to go and now let's flip it. Let's flip it. There's multiple ways to shift how you interpret these events, but this is a really effective one. So, maybe some of you know each other. I don't know. But if you went and told a family member or friend about what happened to you, they're probably actually giving you lots of empathy. They don't think less of you. They like you, they love you. And if someone comes and tells you this stuff, right, you think more of that person. You think they're resilient, they're courageous. You want the best for them. You want them to come out of this even stronger. And that kind of brings the word trust. Sometimes we trust others who've been through the real hard things more than the people who just have this facade of everything's perfect, everything's fine. So, we've been talking about this when it's your own story. It's hard to be that kind of compassionate. So I want you to try something. Think of someone you really genuinely respect, a colleague, a friend, a mentor who's been through something similar. What do you think of them for having gone through it? Why would your story be different? Any different to someone who cares about you? So any compassion flip thoughts that come up, feel free to speak up or write them down in the chat. This is something we all have to practice a lot in this day and age, actually, unfortunately. Okay. All right, get that writing implement out. Oh, I think how great that they reinvented themselves. Oh, thanks, Robin. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And how does that word I could read or that phrase I could reinvent myself land on any of you really suffering right now? We're going to be talking about choice more in a moment. Yeah, if other people don't pick up the work, I can't blame myself. Okay. Others neither. So Shanine is talking about when we're very hard on ourselves. Kim is talking about remembering who she is. Oh, interesting, Jonathan. How others prioritize themselves and their happiness over socially constructed markers of success. We are all very impacted by socially constructed markers of success. I've done some speaking about that too. Um, we all have it in us to even, I think I try about something 10% more courageous to stand up for yourself about what's more important to you. And then Lauren, I like to think about how much energy I was able to bring to my new role and in my personal life when you made a big change. Yeah. Energy is a really good indication. Thank you for bringing that up, Lauren. That is a good sign. It's not good. It's an obvious sign, a clear sign, excuse me, a clear sign when maybe something you're thinking is not doing you any damn good. And I also just like to bring up the fact too that losing your job, losing your identity, even if it was a choice you made yourself, there can be some grief there. I'm not an expert in this. My husband happened to have just lost his mother last week, so I guess it's something I'm thinking about. But that really impacts your energy as well and what you're able to do for yourself. Okay, thank you, Denise. Reinventing yourself is landing well. Look at you go. Okay, lobbying, grant reading. Yeah, somebody asked me a really great question yesterday, which something along the lines, this is a standard coaching question, but it landed for me. I needed to hear it. What would I be thinking or doing if I wasn't worried about money, time, or image? That was in the hour that followed. I let myself be released from that. And boy, was I optimistic and having fun and productive. So, all right, let's move on. Thank you for all the shares. Okay, so, headline, just to underscore some of the things we're talking about here. Authenticity really does build trust. It's just a story many of you have probably heard of here. So, Satya Nadella is the CEO of Microsoft, and he did something very public in 2014 that almost no CEO does. He said publicly that they as a company got it wrong. The culture was broken. He thought they stopped learning, and he thought they had become arrogant. Side note, having been at Microsoft many years before, I was wondering what took him so long. Anyways, that's just a side note. So, but he wrote about it in his book, Hit Refresh, and he didn't spin it. He didn't blame his predecessors. He owned it. He also talked about how inspiring empathy was. So, and what happened, Microsoft at that point in time went from being written off as irrelevant to becoming one of the most valuable companies in the world. Obviously, things have shifted a little bit with the market. We're not going to talk about that, but this wasn't a coincidence, though. It's authentic. It's authenticity. I have trouble with that word. Building trust at scale. So when the person at the top says something and it's a mistake, it gives everybody permission to do the same. And it's not just CEOs. When you stop hiding the hard parts of your story from yourself, even and just owning them, other people will actually look at you differently. You show up differently. You may not purposely do it or not, but there's sort of this confidence when you speak to people at networking events or this and that, that you're like, yeah, this happened. I learned X, Y, and Z. I'm moving on. That's very different from like, oh, got laid off and I don't know what I'm going to do now, right? And so there's a line here I'd like to say between how you publicly show up. We all want to kind of that image thing. But the more you actually feel good about what you're saying about yourself, then that whole thing becomes less of an inside outside and just you. So, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so we talked a little bit about what this looks like at work at Microsoft. I want to tell you, kind of share a little bit more here. I'm really hammering the point home, aren't I, in these slides? But I also want to tell a story. Over 20 years ago, I was working at some creative agency or something in Seattle, and I'll never ever forget this. I was in a meeting and a senior IT manager was asked a question, and he just said, I don't know. Not in a flippant way, but like in a really contemplative, I'm going to go look into that. And it was a huge meeting full of all sorts of people trying to show up at their best. And I've just never forgotten him because to me, it felt like he was just super confident and courageous in owning that he didn't know that. And he gave the rest of the room psychological safety. And that's what actually owning your own story, kind of coming back to that in these other environments, in your next job, in your next meeting, can really do for you and for everyone else. And that's really the baseline of high performing teams. If you ever get curious, there's some really interesting research that came out of Google, maybe 10 years ago, maybe not quite, called Rework. And they were studying, trying to define what makes a high performing team. And they came up, in fact, maybe, Gus, I know we're going to send some stuff out later. Maybe I can find the infographic for this because they came up with what 4 or 5 different concrete things that have to be present in high performing teams. And if you think about it like a triangle or pyramid like Maslow hierarchy of needs, the very bottom is psychological safety. So how can you contribute to that with how you're showing up and how you're thinking about yourself and your own experiences? So all these things trying to shift, get that judge out of the way, and it changes how you're showing up also in your own performance reviews, the networking we've been talking about, and maybe even where you coach others. All right, I've been talking for quite a while. Does anybody like to add anything about maybe how you showed up authentically at work in terms of owning your own stuff? What's happened? I feel like I skipped a slide. Did we? We did. We did. I'm so sorry. I meant to do this one. We did not go here. I promised you a second exercise and we didn't do it. So this is the one that was supposed to be before we talked about authenticity. This is where hopefully you're walking away with something really helpful to you today. So I'd like you to go back to that story and write three alternative interpretations. So don't spin it. Don't pretend there weren't any hard feelings. Just what else could be true that you hadn't thought about. So the example I told you about Tableau was kind of my version of what's a different interpretation of how I could show up in that moment. But what we're talking about is something that might have happened to you that you're still holding on to. So we're going to do the 3 minutes thing again. I'm going to go off camera. And if you need any support or help, I'm watching the chat. You can just let me know if you need more time. So, all right, here we go with 3 minutes. Actually, while you're writing, I'm going to answer Denise's question now. So she's saying, I believe it's a she. You can tell me if I'm wrong. When we rewrite these stories and explain ourselves to people who might hire us, how vulnerable should we be? That's the main question. So this person is explaining their present strategies to keep repeating life crisis with different words, implying the okay now. Okay. So that's a really good question. And the general answer is going to be it depends. One way to look at this is to also talk about what you're learning during a time when you've needed to step away from work, whether it's your choice or not. What you're getting out of and you don't necessarily have to say, well, I've learned, because that could sound kind of robotic. What you're bringing back to the workplace that you didn't know before. Looks like there's some good answers in the chat too. Yeah, during your job and improve yourself. Okay. That's true, Daniela. But I think one way in an interview, there's this, can never remember the phrase, but it's calling out the elephant in the room before they do. So if you suspect they might be looking at some gaps on your resume. And if you speak to them first, just like it's a bit of a negotiation in a way, you can say, I've taken some time off here. It was an important, um, family issue, whatever it is. You don't even have to, for the person who's talking about life crisis, you don't even have to be that honest. But, and you can say during that time, I've worked on X, Y, and Z skills, and I'm ready to come back, and here's what I can do for your company. This is a really interesting topic. Here I am talking about authenticity, but I'm also talking about protecting yourself, something less stressful. I'm not clear about how to explain this. Okay. So, Roger, that's really one way to answer this. I'm going to go back and forth on my answers a little bit here, you guys. I'm going to turn I think we're over the time anyway, is I think the core thing is what will you feel comfortable saying coming out of your mouth? What will you feel good about? And if you feel confident and comfortable saying, I need to just take some time off to care for my own health, to care for my parents' health, whatever that is, then say it. That confidence is going to come through. Honestly, it's not really any of their business. If you want to talk about moving into something less stressful, then you could either just say that and own it. Um, that could be problematic also because you don't want people to think you're not going to be able to do the job. You could also just talk about how something along the line of reinventing yourself, like an area that you want to explore in more depth. The case of the VP of Finance I mentioned to you before, I'm quite certain she didn't let anyone else know that her CEO is, crazy tunes. But she probably said something more along the lines of, I want to keep doing the work that's closer to my sphere of influence or my skill set, something like that. This is a dance. I'm not going to lie about that or diminish that it's not really easy. But what we're doing today is actually first for you in for your own peace of mind, these three alternative interpretations. And then I can be happy to help reframe or rephrase this to something you would be more comfortable with. We're almost to the end here, but I've got some free sessions coming up here. Anyone have a strategy that they felt worked for them with this topic we're talking about, which is what can you say that feels true for you, but doesn't hinder your efforts to get hired? Okay. If you're ready to move on or not, just give me a yes or no in the chat, please. Okay. Great. All right. So you're welcome, Roger. Okay. So we're skipping around a little bit because we've talked some things already. So I'd like to go here now. So you may or may not have heard of this quote, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent, which has been attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt. I don't know if that's true. That's what I first heard. But I really like the intention behind this, the idea that your sense of self is ultimately yours to protect. Going back to what we said, whether you speak the literal truth in an interview or something like that or not. But I also want to be honest with you because I think this deserves honesty more than inspiration right now. Some things that happen to us are genuinely unfair, unjust, cruel, kind. Maybe some of you were lied about. I've had that experience. Passed over unfairly, managed out, scapegoated. And in those moments, telling yourself just, don't consent to feeling inferior, that doesn't work. So here's my version of what I think Eleanor Roosevelt meant. I think she's meant you may not have had control over what happened, but you do get a say in what story you carry forward. That part, the story you tell yourself going forward, that is in your hands. And that's what we're talking about today. Oh, the chat is burning up. Let's see. Allison, I found that using a chat bot is helpful if I can find common themes and areas of strengths. Yeah. If you feel like you've been too much of a hummingbird, if you've had some adverse life events and need a positive way to reframe. Yes. I think that's a great use of AI. I like to think or state that this is from Lauren, that was looking for a role where my particular set of skills and approach were valuable, saying things were a mess and they hated me in a role that I left. I mean, we've all been in the professional organizational world. I'm going to be really snarky for a second. Is that okay? Sometimes I like to call the corporate workplace kind of a, petri dish of all of our, inner child challenges. So, but we all have to, you know, have been in community as humans since the beginning of humans, and we all have to kind of learn to deal with each other. And we know our ears and know when maybe someone is saying something to cover up something that just would cause more problems than it's worth. So maybe I need to rethink some of the things I say about authenticity at work in this presentation and have more caveats. I think the most important thing here is for you to feel good in here so that you can move on, reinvent yourself, and feel good again. So, all right. So this is one of my favorite topics. I've talked about the in a previous power giving yourself permission. So Eleanor Roosevelt gave us the defensive version of this concept. Don't let others define you. And Karl Lowenthal is giving us the offensive version. Actively claim your own authority. That's what we're really talking about here. That's my favorite topic of all times. So together, they're really the complete picture. Protect your story from others' narratives and then deliberately write your own. So you might be saying, I have permission to own your story. I have permission to tell it on my own terms, regardless of the actual facts. I have permission to stop apologizing for the path that got me here. And that's self-authority. That's what all of what we're talking about has been building towards. So one more little exercise, which you can do publicly or not. So could you finish that sentence for yourself, please? You can do it in the chat. You can come off mute. You don't have to tell the whole story. You don't have to explain it or justify it. I mean, you could type in like popcorn. It'll mean something for you, maybe not to us, but this act is for you because naming it or even just yourself or even just typed into a chat box you might never see again is the beginning of owning it. Authorship, self-authority, and that's what today has been all about. So anyone want to finish that sentence publicly? Totally optional, no pressure. Yeah. Oh, I love this. Sticking around a job so you're a stable, trustworthy, reliable, valued resource. From Michael, Victoria says, motherhood adds value in the professional world, even in a male-dominated industry. And Allison says, my hummingbird nature is an asset, not a liability. Yeah. How's that feel? Claim it. Shanine says that while the projects I founded, whoops, there's so many, I can't read them all, were not continued by those after me. They had great value to the community and lasting effects. They gave me a unique lens I now use in a different sphere. That's great. Adriana, career transitions can be really hard, and sometimes you have to go down before you can go up again. Yeah, I can feel that. They owning there. Lauren, I have a unique set of skills that I've gained from a career of diverse experiences. Yep. Michael saying, I'm saying yep, like I'm approving, and I don't mean that to be at all. I'm really just like enthusiastic about all the sharing. Michael, staying at a job allowed you the chance to grow significantly through stability. Yeah. I have one too that I don't know if I've ever really said this publicly in a job interview or something. Some of the statements that are coming through here seem like they could do double duty with your internal story and your external story. But one I realized in my career at one point is went to the good schools and, all my peers were at the International Monetary Fund and all this stuff. And I was like, I think I decided subconsciously at a certain point that I didn't want to like go up because the things that you have to do when you climb the ladder suck. I saw my managers, this is my opinion, right? So I guess I'm being very open. That's my brand, transparent. You heard it here first. Um, they had to spend time in meetings just talking about things and making agreements on things that they may not even believe in. And I realized that I was more of a, I'd really like to take concrete action. One of my top Clifton strengths as activator. So I guess I made this decision in my own mind that made me feel better about my own story that I wasn't, in charge of some small country by the time I was 30. So, okay, Jonathan, I'll never be a doctor, but my community health experience and empathy is invaluable in promoting health and well-being in other ways. Yeah. All right. Are you guys feeling it? Are you feeling some internal strength, maybe some peace? Yeah, great. Okay. So, coming around the bend here, I would like to offer eight lucky people, circus time, cir a free session. I've changed my process a little bit. So if you scan that QR code, it should take you straight to this SavvyCal app. It might take a minute. For some reason on my phone, it seems to take a minute before it kicks in. And there are 8 sessions, but there on some of those days there's 2. And I think the start time varies either between the top of the hour or quarter after. And if you can't find a slot that works, because I really would like to help you all out, I'm offering these free sessions that we can work specifically on your situation if you like. And you can see that you can contact me directly at becky@fireworkscoaching.com. Actually, let me put that email in just in case. We are going to send out some resources that I'm going to bring up in just a second to spell my own thing properly. So, and that QR code is going to come up again in just a minute. So, not the prettiest slide, but I wanted to make sure that you have some other resources. I've talked about some of them. So, the very first one is I found on Spotify. I believe it's a full recording of the Curiosity Driven Life. So, Oprah has taken down just about everything else. I spent some time searching. I've done a couple of these other webinars that I've referenced here and there. They're all on the YouTube channel for Tufts alumni, and this one will be as well. And then I recommend these books all the time to my clients, and I come back to them myself. I referenced Carl Lowenthal, her quote earlier, which is a great book called Take Back Your Brain. These are all great. I think the one I've probably read the most of is Playing Big. And while that book is particularly okay, that's just one second, Michael. So that book, it is targeted more towards women, but I don't think it's restricted to just women. So the email that enters in chat is different from the one on my slide. That's possible. Let's see. Becky@fireworkscoaching.com. You're right. Thank you. That's because my personal email is Becky KA. That's what happens, which you can also use at Gmail. Yeah, either one of those will get to me. So, okay, so now we're going to officially get to the questions. And you get to see a picture of me holding a baby goat. So, joy matters. Showing up as yourself matters. And I wanted to do that a little bit for you today. I live 20 minutes from a baby goat farm, and let's just say I'm a frequent flyer there. So, that's one of the places I go to really rejuvenate myself. But I want to, feel free to come off mute. We definitely have a solid 10 minutes left. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions about what we just talked about or something else. So,
Or you could post in the chat too.
yeah. Yes, I can show that again. And that's going to get emailed out to you too. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. I can't believe no one's asking me how many baby goats can I hold at once? Because there's some old photo of me. I think there's like 3 on my lap and 2 on the chair and 1 in my arms.
Oh, I want to see the pictures. I'm recently following a lot of baby goats on
Are
Instagram,
you?
because it's the most happy thing.
Yeah. Find it. Oh, Denise, thoughts for staying positive in the current market. Find a baby goat farm. Yeah. Yep. Kittens. I mean, someone earlier in the chat when was talking about reinvention, about doing more things in the community, right? Volunteering. And I think the underlying thread to that, I don't know if that person said it literally, but was finding your own joy, which is certainly related to what we're talking about here today. Your own, sense of well-being and peace is more important, especially right now, and will take you much further in your career than probably anything else. A practice you undergo to deepen your own positive intelligence. Great question, Sarah. So, um, yes, it's a little bit of a long answer, but I'll try to make it succinct. So I'm trained in the positive intelligence, and there's a book of the same name. Anyone who comes and coaches with me, we work on this. And there's three main chunks of what you do. One is identifying so we all have the judge, we judge ourselves, we judge others, we judge our circumstances. We've been talking about that today. We have these 9 accomplice saboteurs that are your own special sauce. There's a short assessment. I'll get that included or added to the resources. And then the practice. So once you kind of have a better sense of what's going on and catching yourself with these voices. And by the way, the saboteurs have actually developed from when all of us were young, everyone was young, and it was a way of having some sense of control or safety in the world when you didn't have much, usually when you're a kid, and now they're a habit. So there's something called the sage powers that are the counteractive, counter, is that a word? Behaviors, and they're a combination of really small mindfulness moments and some mindset framework. So one of my favorite ones is really relevant in the workplace is called Fascinated Anthropologist. So here you are, you're in a meeting, people are talking about stuff that doesn't make any sense again. Or it could be even a really great meeting where you're making some great decisions, you're going to do some wonderful things for the world, but the judge kicks in. Why did that person cut their hair that way? Why is the meeting going on past 9? This doesn't make any sense, right? Like, where's my part in this? I can't believe they cut my slide from that deck. So if instead you change your mind to be from the mindset of a fascinating anthropologist, just like, Jane Goodall and the chimps, and really start looking around and getting curious. Curiosity is a really big key here. So there is more to it. The book, I don't have time to explain the whole thing, but it can be the book and the body of work. It's based on research. The research talks about how in the span of 10 seconds, you can unhook these inner saboteurs and literally move your thinking to a different part of your brain. And it was actually intended to be used in the workplace. So there's some great stories in the book about how various individuals and leaders, well, we're all leaders, various leaders have used it even in a span of 5 minutes to really shift things for their company, for their team, for their own experience. So long answer, but long topic. Anyone else?
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. My pleasure. Sure thing. One of my favorite questions to ask has nothing to do with the topic, but what is everybody looking forward to? Another positive intelligence trick that's not in the book, but it is literally Rogers called positive intelligence. And the author is Shirzad Shamin. Summer, great. Ooh, alpacas. That's the other thing. There's alpacas. I live like just outside of Portland, Oregon, about 25 minutes outside the city. And then about 15 minutes further west, that's where the goat farms and the alpaca farms and the wineries live. So y'all got to come out here. Oh, great. Daughter's wedding. Okay. Yep. Okay. I don't think there's any real questions here, but um, wedding anniversary, that's a good one. Maybe just as a sayonara, if folks want to put in just one word, how you feel now at the end of our session. Lighter. Great. Much better. Encouraged, validated, grateful, better, calm. Yay. Reminded of community. Oh, that's great. Feeling lighter. Ditto, ditto, ditto. Good one, Kim. Okay. All right. I think that's a wrap.
I think it is too. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Becky. That was great. Um,
you're
Very
welcome.
engaged group. Like the chat was exploding. I could hardly keep.
Yeah, that was fun.
So, yeah.
I wanted to make sure to read it out too because this is going to be
Hmm.
recorded. So I wanted to kind of,
Right.
or it is
Right.
recorded, but it'll be posted. So I want to bring that too.
Hmm.
You're all
Yes.
very, very welcome.
Okay.
I hope to see some of you in the complimentary consult
Yeah. Yeah.
and be happy to help. So, all right.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you all for joining. And please look at our calendar for the next one. Becky will be back in a couple of months or a few months, and then
Yeah.
we've got some great content coming up from her and from the our other speaker as well. So thanks so much, and have a great week. Have a great weekend. Take care.
Yeah. Okay. And I'll see you in a few minutes.
Hmm.
Okay. Bye.
Yes.